We got Chloe from Michigan. Pronouns are she, her. Wants to weigh in on the chat poll question, which, if I have correctly, it was, should atheists be able to question God, right? So how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing okay. How are you?
Doing really good.
Can you hear? Oh, I shouldn't. Yeah, I'm supposed to ask that. Sorry.
You're okay. Hey, it's okay. You get one. Everybody gets one, and then no more. You're cut off. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, so I've sort of been just kind of wanting to, just hop on here. It's my first time doing this on YouTube Live, and recently, in the past year or so, I've been making more connections and friends in the atheist community, and it's been giving me a lot to think about. And there's just been a lot of stuff that's been really interesting. And so when I was asked like what topic, I didn't have just one in particular. I'm kind of interested in both engaging with the questions that you posed in the survey and a little bit of feedback on one of the previous callers, and then just sort of having a conversational adventure kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds fine. What do you want to start with?
Well, I think the easiest place for me to start in with, apart from saying I have horrible ADHD right now, even with meds because of a lot of stress I'm going through at the moment, so forgive me. But that being said, the easiest place for me to get into was a previous caller who is kind of trying to talk through sharing some stories about like personal loss and certain, different things between like their real life events and like dreams and things like that kind of spoke to them. And so something I've been learning a lot from conversations with my friend Fern, who I think is in the live chat, is that I've been piecing together and realizing that there's a lot of communication issues that I think that we Christians have in how we understand things and communicate things, and how that can like lead to some messy conversations. And Fern has really challenged me quite a bit about to really think more deeply. And I really and I love that, because I'm always trying to understand things better. And so what I first wanted to say is that, like, on the one hand, I empathize and get with the previous caller. Well, not the previous, probably the one before that was, coming from, because I know what it's like when you have these admittedly subjective experiences that really speak to you. But then also, while you can share that story, a subjective experience can't, of course, it can't like just be something that would just compel somebody else, to believe per se. It's, we can.
Yeah, because it's first person, it's a revelation is going to be first person experience, assuming that those things happen, right?
Yeah. And, I've had those kinds of things as well, and they've been meaningful to me. But then, I also, I've noticed that a lot of from the bits of the shows that I've heard where theists call in and whatnot, I've noticed kind of a pattern where on the shows there's a lot of bumbling and struggling to like communicate clearly and be able to answer certain questions. And then if it's like on social media and it's just online, some of the same, I think types of people or similar, like they can just be real assholes, just really bullying and like trying to shove a certain kind of certainty judgmentally. And something that's brewing in my head.
On which part, Chloe? Like, you're saying who's on the theist part or the atheist part? I'm missing some information.
That's okay. What's your full question?
Well, maybe you want to continue. I just didn't. I wasn't understanding who you were referring to, and you were saying that they were like a lot of bashing and things like that. I didn't know who you were referring to.
Oh, and in terms of the bashing, I actually am saying that the theists and Christians have been doing the bashing.
Okay, that's what I want to understand. Okay.
It's been, yeah, like it's just like, this is just absolute fact, and if you don't believe it and if you don't accept it, then X, Y, Z. And I've been you know, I've been having this slow wake up to like how much of like just the huge majority of Christendom, you know, and the church religion is like the behavior is awful. And even though I have critiques about like behavior and also about like how much people have or haven't thought about the answers that they want to give, I've also been having to confront ways in which I've been raised and conditioned based on the bubble I was raised in, so that I can only give answers that go so far. And I'm not also prepared for certain kinds of questions. But because I love to learn, that's been, you know, stimulating a lot of curiosity and reviving a lot of desire to learn. And I think I want to put this out there both to like affirm something that I really appreciate about the atheist community, and also to critique something in the theist world, that like something I just really appreciate is that, you know, as I've been getting to know more of you better, like there's just this real genuine desire for truth, for a really thorough conversation, to just really think about things and to seek really deep, comprehensive answers. And also, you know, and then to kind of, I really appreciate that, because I mean, that's just loving the truth, you know?
Can I answer it in right here? Well, I wanted to thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I'm going to insert it in just like a little 2 cents. That way we can get a little back and forth. I'm very appreciative of that, by the way. I see good people that believe in all sorts of stuff. I see bad people that believe in very similar things that I believe in, right? Now, I think that religious beliefs and things like that have way more of an impact on informing somebody's beliefs. Or if you're like very skeptical of science, it's going to inform your beliefs when we go through some pandemic. And like, I'm not getting a vaccine. I have a theory that a lot of those people are people that didn't want to like get vaccines as a kid. They're like scared of needles, but I don't know if that's an accurate hypothesis or not. But I guess like all of that's fine. You know, I think that you can look at the people and say people do really shitty things. People do really good things. Some Christians make other Christians look bad. Some atheists make other atheists look bad. A lot of that meta stuff, I want to be honest with you, is not as important to me unless it comes down to how like somebody's actions, how the beliefs inform their actions, and how they go out and, you know, harm somebody or do something that indirectly harms somebody. What I really care about is just the content that we're expressing and whether or not it's true. And so I don't want to like flip this on you because you said something like, you know, you said you weren't prepared to answer a lot of these questions, but I am curious, and maybe this is, you just tell me straightforwardly if this is not your concern of the call. I'm interested in why you believe and how you maintain your belief, because I'm not a believer and I've never believed in Christianity or God. So it fascinates me, and I want to know from the caller's point of view, like, why?
Well, first of all, I want to say, don't feel bad about asking me anything, whether I feel like I'm prepared or not, because I always think questions are interesting. And if I'm not prepared to answer something, it's at least going to stimulate my brain, and I'll be like, that's fascinating. I need to work on that. But anyway, so having said that, as to like how or why I believe and how I maintain it, is that like what you were asking? Like, say it to me one more time.
Like what, you know, it says you're a theist, so I assume you believe the proposition God exists, but like maybe you want to say more specifically, I believe in Jesus, or Jesus died for our sins. And the reason I believe that is because of, and then what I'm looking for is like reasons that raise the probability, not like it makes me feel good or like, you know, things like that, like utility aspects. Right. Yeah.
Right. Well, you know, it's, you know, I think this is like a core question that pops up all over the place. And ironically, at this point in my life, I've been going through a lot of deconstruction, a lot of kind of coping with betrayal trauma. And it has made a lot of things fall away that, if not for my experiential relationship with God, I would be an atheist. And then I know that as soon as I say that that the whole phrase experiential relationship with God, that there are all these critiques that come up that have to do with like, well, I mean, sometimes we can hallucinate, sometimes we can like fool ourselves, and it's feelings, and like, how do you know? And you know, as I've, you know, Fern's been teaching me a lot about all these questions and these other standpoints. And the thing is, when Fern also says that, like, but me as a Christian, that I believe in crazy magic shit. So from that lens and through that lens of, you know, believing in that, even though there's all this stuff in the Bible that raises very good questions about whether or not God is good and whether or not God is love, from the paradigm of my crazy magic shit of believing that God is love and that love is at the center, you know, love is something that science can study, but love is not something that we, I think, ever think that science is what validates. And so there are all sorts of answers and stories I could tell you that could tell you like how and why. I can tell you how like my inner experience of God is different than other feelings. And
well, maybe I should be more specific. What got you to believe in the first place? Or was there a pivotal moment? Were you born into it, or?
I was I was born and raised for sure at first. Yep, I was born and raised.
Sure. And so if you think that you were raised, I mean, this is a very kind of cliche, memey response I'm about to give you, but I think it's very, like, it should be concerning for people in this situation. If you were born in another, like, country, like, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, do you think that you'd be a practicing Muslim?
Entirely possible.
Do we think that that's a good reason to believe, though? That's what I'm concerned about.
Well, I actually don't think that that's a good reason, but that's the beginning of like my honest answer of how I got this way. And
sure.
over time, you know, wounding after wounding, betrayal and such, like basically most of my biggest harms are actually from within the Christian community. And so, you know, from other Christians. And so, you know, if anything, because of how life experiences that are too complex for me to go into right now have just destroyed a lot, just tons of my trust in the bubble I was raised in and other institutions and structures, the thing that still holds is this experience. And I've been through so much trauma that has affected my ability to feel and to function, that at least for me, also speaks to like how it's not just feelings, because if you know anything about trauma, you know that trauma really fucks with your ability to feel, and it also really fucks with your ability to like, you know.
Can I ask you this question? Can I ask you a question real quick? You said earlier that God is love. If God exists and loves you, why did he allow you to have this trauma?
Well, I'm going to give you my honest answer. It is probably going to sound a bit long-winded, but I'm actually not trying to dodge your question. I just want to say that first, okay?
Okay.
I don't think we view you as dishonest, Chloe. You seem to be, you seem to be honest. You just sounds like you got a lot in your head and you want to say, and that's perfectly fine.
I do. I mean, for so long, I've always tried to like avoid the thing of like being too much, but finally I'm just like, I'm Chloe and I'm a lot. My brain is almost too much for me sometimes. So you ask me if I believe that God is love, why did God allow me to go through all these things? And so I'm somebody who believes that I believe in a literal Satan. I believe in a time before there was sin and evil. And I believe in the impact that sin had afterwards, and also that there's the complicating factor of free will. And based on, you know, things that I've looked at and examined and just kind of poured over for myself, love is not really love without the freedom to say no, and that freedom is really risky. And then, you know, because, you know, if there's no freedom to say no, it's not really love, it's abuse, however sophisticated and medicated and pleasurable.
You weren't the one saying no.
Not really.
Chloe, you weren't the one saying no, right? You weren't saying no to God when you had the trauma experiences or the trauma causing experiences, correct?
Right. Wait, what's your, I wasn't
So
saying
that doesn't really answer
what?
the question. That doesn't really answer the question.
I know. I'm working to it. I know.
I mean, it answers the question.
I promise I'm working to it.
No, it's not long. I'm just not following you, because the people saying no were the ones causing the trauma. You could make that case, and maybe you are. But I'm asking, why did God allow you to experience the trauma? You're not the one who said no.
Well, this is at least a question that challenges me to want to come up with a faster answer than what I'm coming up with right now. But I can picture it, but give me a second, because basically the way that I look at this and have come to understand it is that it's like a complex math problem, and there's a certain factor, that free will is and that it impacts. And so while yes, God has allowed me to go through certain things, and God allows things that I do not understand. I mean, the stuff I've gone through will seem like 2 bits compared to just other stories that I know, and all kinds of stories of human suffering in the world. And coexisting with that, I also look and believe that Jesus on the cross entered into full solidarity with all of our suffering, and that doesn't make it right, but that he went into like every moment of like, whether it's like a current thing of suffering or a flashback to it, all of that.
Okay. Let me see if I can summarize. Let me see if I can shorten what you're saying. You deserve the trauma. Is that what you're saying?
Actually, no. Actually, no.
Because it sounds like you're making an excuse for a loving God to allow you to experience trauma. And I'm wondering, what's the excuse?
I get that. And this is, again, why I actually really like having these conversations, even if I don't have the greatest answer at first, is because these questions, it makes me want to write stuff down and think more and try to distill things better, because I don't, how do I say this? He suffers with me, and he suffers even more than I do. And there is...
So what?
Perfect beings suffer?
It's completely irrelevant to your suffering.
Huh?
That's completely irrelevant. I mean, you're basically saying that you're suffering so God can suffer, right? Because I'm assuming you believe in the omni-God, right?
I believe in what?
The omni-God?
You're assuming that I believe in...
The omni-God, omnibenevolent, omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent.
Oh yeah, omnipotent, omniscient, got you. So you are, I'm fine with you interrupting wherever. Sometimes it feels like you're, and I'm not trying to like whine here. You are sometimes asking me questions before I've totally gotten the thought out. But I'm not trying to like whine like, oh, you won't listen or whatever, nothing like that. I think that free will is a complicator that, if free will isn't like the same across the board for everybody, like then it's not like just, it's not like free will being the same for everybody and respect of free will being the same for everybody. It leads to variables and complications, and I don't have all the answers for that. But what I do know, is that understanding and seeing how God suffers with me, and that there's a way in which it's just like everybody's got to have freedom to mess up or do well. And it's not right. It's not fair that any of us suffer. And I wanted to say that right there. I don't think that there's like a justification or something rational about suffering. And I don't think that God is happy.
So why does God allow it?
Or feels good about, huh?
Why does God allow it?
I'm going to say, okay, so I'm going to say free will. And then of course I know that like, that's something that I can't flesh out better right now, but that's my fastest answer. And
Well, let me try a different approach, and maybe we can get it. Yeah, well, let me try a different approach. Yeah, we're going to stay on the same topic.
Sure.
Are you a parent?
I'm a godmother.
Are you a
I'm very
parent?
dedicated godmother.
Okay. Okay. So let's say there's a parent out there who intentionally allows their child to touch a hot stove. Is that a good parent?
Mm. I mean, the easy, obvious answer would be no.
Okay. So why is it no?
Because love is supposed to be protective. And love is supposed to be anti-harm.
Yeah. Right. And you can teach a child not to touch hot stove without burning themselves, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then,
do you think there's a parent out there that would stop their child from having heartache if they could?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I know that very well.
Is there is it a good parent or a bad parent that will step in front of a bullet for their child?
A good parent.
Yeah. And if they allow their child to suffer and they can suffer along with them, is that a good parent or a bad parent?
Well, when you phrase it that way, absolutely a bad parent. I don't believe that God allows us to suffer so that he can suffer with us. But something else that I do know about parenting, because even though I don't have blood children, I've been kind of a 24/7 helping raise my godchildren. And what I can say is that we can pour ourselves and do our damnedest into loving and shaping and protecting kids. And then sometimes there are factors outside of our control. And here I know there's comes the, then what if is he omnipotent? I know, but like there are factors that can be outside of our control that in spite of everything that we would love and want to do, they prevent us to be able to do certain things. And then I know that having said that, it launches right into like, well, then how can he be all powerful?
Exactly. That would be how is he omnipotent? Right? Because there are no factors out of an omnipotent being's control.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out too, I'm going to cut it here after this, but I want to point this out because you talked about the relationship. I pulled up something that just talks about signs that you're in a toxic relationship. And then I'm just going to list these things and you can just silently, I don't know, agree or disagree or whatever and take away with this. But I think that this highlights the relationship that a lot of religious people tell me. All take, no give, feeling drained, lack of trust, hostile atmosphere, occupied with imbalance, constant judgment, persistent unreliability, nonstop narcissism, loaded with negative energy, lack of communication, continuous disrespect, avoidance, insufficient support, ceaseless control issues, constant challenges, persistent self-betrayal, never-ending drama, feelings of unworthiness, vibes of entrapment. I could go on, but I think when I pull up, like I do this a lot when I talk with people about the relationship, and I'll just Google signs that you're in a toxic relationship. And it almost, I'm not saying that necessarily you've said this because I don't know your entire experience. You know, maybe you just look at that and go, that's not my God. That's nothing like my God. But I have had these conversations and it's almost like I'm reading, like the person that wrote that article was talking about this specific character, like to a T.
Sure.
Like they were just describing that person.
Yeah.
And so I don't want you to just, you know, oh, I agree with you, J. Mike. You know, obviously we have different views, but I don't know. I would say like, think about that. And then maybe you just go, J. Mike's completely crazy. That has nothing to do with it. But I don't know. I think that's something to consider when you call it a relationship, because the relationships I have, they're gifts. They're given to me. I didn't really even ask for them. They were just kind of handed to me, like whether it's, you know, everybody at the ACA or my friends around me in my area, a lot of this it's like gifted to me. And I don't have any of this. When I go through that list, I don't see, you know, the ACA or my friends or my family falling victim of any one of these things. And that's like, it's good. That makes me think that's a good relationship. But if I had saw a couple of things on there, it's getting a little toxic quick. I start seeing most of those things on there. But I'm going to move on. I hate to cut it short, Chloe. I'd like you to call back when I'm on again. You seem like you're in the pursuit of truth as well, you know. So I think we're on the same team in that sense, right? We just have different conclusions.
Yeah. Is it okay if I say one more short thing?
Sure.
Or do you want to end things now?
Yeah, you go ahead if it's really short. I want to try to get to one last call. I think it'll be short. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This I'll say. The list about the toxic relationship features, I completely get where you're coming from and where everything looks like that. And the one thing I want to say, you know, before we end this is that under the premise that there's a being who is literally, you know, according to my crazy magic shit, believing in an infinite God who's bigger than I can comprehend, there are human relationships that are more fully comprehensible by us. And then we can look at a relationship between a human and a supernatural God, and there isn't going to be a perfect parallel. There are valid points that are raised that look very similar. And then also, like, it's just not the same components if you're trying to navigate and understand between a finite being and an infinite being. And so that's just kind of the last thought that I had. And I really appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, and I would add finite. I would add, if we make that distinction, finite fathers are apparently much better than infinite fathers. So, because they actually provide the love, care, and stop suffering when they have the ability to do that. So.
Some of them do, because some of them do. Not all of them do.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we know infinite fathers don't do it. So. But all right, thank you, Chloe. We appreciate the call.
You call in.
Yep.